I'm not young. I'm not exactly old either, probably older than most of you reading this, though. I grew up in a time before cell phones. The internet was a pretty new thing, and we most certainly didn't have places like this to share weird or scary stories. I wish there had been something like that, though. Maybe I would have got some advice, or at least had a better record than a spotty memory hazed over with the alcohol and drug use of my 20s. Honestly, I had mostly forgotten about the truth of this incident. That is, until recently when it all came flooding back like a nightmarish wave. I think my brain protected me from the trauma, buried it so deep it took a long time to come back to the surface. It's at the surface now, though. Now that it's back. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead, though. Let's start at the beginning. The year was 1996. I was 14 years old, living in a small California town. My parents had purchased a house in the mountains. My father had become disenfranchised with life in the city, and he wanted to go somewhere that our closest neighbor was nearly a mile away. I can't say it made me or my sister Katie too terribly happy. We lost all of our friends and ended up in this small town school that involved an hour-long bus ride to and from the campus. She made new friends quickly. She was 2 years older than me, pretty popular and the kind of person that people were drawn to. I, on the other hand, was short, awkward, and quiet. Suffice to say, I got picked on a lot, and I didn't adjust super well. My father saw it as an opportunity to toughen me up and teach me some things about how to take care of our new home. Well, if you're just going to be sitting around the house all summer anyway, then you might as well learn some life skills, that sort of thing. So that was that. I took one last look at my new PlayStation and my new copy of Resident Evil that I'd saved my allowance for, and I was put to work. I cleaned gutters, mowed the lawn, helped my dad repaint the garage, and finally, the most important task to this story, I helped him build a new woodshed. I say helped, but in reality, he talked me through it, and I actually did the majority of the labor. I think he always wished that I was more the type to work with my hands, even though, especially at that age, I was more into drawing, writing, and video games than sitting out in the sun and building a shed. "We gotta get you some calluses, kiddo," he would say while slapping my back. "It builds character." I'm not sure if I built any character, but I damn sure built that woodshed. Old grocery store pallets made up the flooring, but the walls and the roof were these huge corrugated aluminum sheets, and it made sure that the rain ran off and away from the wood piles. I cut myself so many damn times getting those sheets in place. I looked like I'd lost a fight with a razor blade factory. Badly. Sometimes I wonder if all the blood I spilled in that grass summoned him. Like I accidentally performed some ritual that I was totally unaware of. Step 1. Spill a couple of pints of blood on your backyard lawn. Step 2. Curse profusely while putting up a woodshed with your dad laughing at you the whole time. Step 3. Spend every night praying to whatever damn deity will listen that you don't have to spend another second working on that goddamn shed. And then step 4. Summon an unholy evil that will permanently scar you and leave a broken mess repressing memories for the majority of your life. Pretty shit ritual, if you ask me. I am joking, though. It has nothing to do with the blood, or even the shed, really. The shed's just where it first appeared. I can remember that night with more clarity than I really want to. It was the night that I finished building. I remember my dad actually telling me that I had done a good job as he inspected my work. He brought me a Coke with dinner. He said it would be a beer if I was a little older. And honestly, I appreciated the gesture. I know that I make him seem like a hard ass, but the reality was that he was a good man, just very old school in his sensibilities. After dinner, I went up to my room and, oh my god, finally spent some time playing my game. My sister had left for the night. She was going on her first date with this boy that she'd met at school. Since she was going to be out late, my parents agreed that I had earned it and said that I could stay up as late as I liked. My hands hurt, and I was exhausted, but honestly, I didn't care. I felt like I'd earned my time to relax and enjoy myself, and it felt good. So I stayed up way too late. Clock rolled over to 1:30, and I finally told myself that I should probably get some sleep because who knew what chore Dad had for me that next day. And after getting ready for bed, I went to my window and looked down at the yard at my handiwork. I was actually pretty proud of myself. And that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was my dad, but as my eyes adjusted, looking in the dark, I realized that no, he was far too tall, far too lanky, and much too pale. His clothes hung off his thin frame in ragged tatters and billowed in the night breeze. He walked around the shed, sliding his hand against the aluminum walls, tink, 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 sound of his nails clicking against the bends in the metal. Corrugations, I think you call them. Then he looked up at me. There was a shine in his eyes, like the shine a raccoon has when you catch it hunting through your trash. His face was gaunt, pale. Sunken cheeks made his cheekbones look like sharp daggers jutting out of the sides of his face, and his mouth was little more than a thin line of nothing drawn onto his low-set jaw. It wriggled slightly as he fixed his gaze on me. Awake too late, 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 late. It spoke. I mean, I shouldn't have been able to hear its soft whisper from where I was, yet I could, very easily. It rang in my ears with a pitch similar to someone rubbing a wetted finger on a half-full crystal glass. Its stutter, a manufactured weakness, like its weak-looking frame. Come out to play, or I come in. It cocked its head at an unnatural angle and twisted it further and further until it was looking at me almost upside down. It hummed, and the drone filled the air around me. The floor beneath my feet vibrated at the odd frequency, and it resonated through my legs up into my chest. I tried to cry out to my parents, but I felt paralyzed. I still don't know if it did something to me or I was just so scared I couldn't move. I watched as it twisted its body into a bizarre angle and skittered from the woodshed to the side of the house. I could hear it clambering up the wall toward my window. My feet suddenly broke free from their place in the ground, and I stumbled backward toward the door to my room. "Dad! Mom!" I remember saying the words, but I honestly can't be sure if it was a shout or a whisper, though I would realize that it really didn't matter. The face suddenly appeared in my second-story window. It was close enough now that I could better make out its features. Its eyes still gleamed from the sunken place in its sockets, and the lime mouth still quivered as it hummed that awful noise. Paper-thin skin was stretched tightly across its skull. You could almost make out the blood pumping in its veins on its face. The humming stopped as its mouth stretched open in an awful, void-like maw, and it clapped its jaws together quickly and sharply over and over again, and the snapping noise of its mouth opening and closing at high speed sounded like a camera shutter quickly taking pictures. I barely had time to think if I had locked my window before the creature slid its bony fingers into the crack of the windowsill and lifted it. It slithered through like liquid, and before it touched the ground, I'd flung my bedroom door open and ran into the hallway towards my parents' room. They were still soundly asleep in their bed, of course. I ran over to my father and started shaking him, trying to wake him up, but it was like he was in a coma. I shook and shook him, but his eyes stayed closed and his body stayed still. I ran around the bed to try the same thing with my mother, screaming like a madman the whole time for them to wake up. Sleep like little angels. Sleep like the dead. It stood in my parents' doorway. It looked taller than before, as if it was wreathed in shadow. Its head twisted unnaturally again, and it wrapped its fingers around the door frame as if it was about to pounce. That's when I heard the front door open. It was quiet, my sister trying to sneak in after her curfew. Not quiet enough, though. The thing spun its head around quickly, reacting to the new presence in the house, and before I could react, it was making its way to the stairs with that unnatural grace and fluidity. Its hands and feet clawed along the walls, knocking pictures down. I could hear them breaking on the ground. I ran after it, not even sure what the hell I was planning to do. I watched it vanish down the stairs and heard my sister let out one of the most terrifying screams that I've ever heard. Even when I had convinced myself that there was never a monster, that it had simply been a human intruder in our home that night, I never forgot the sound of that scream. From the top of the stairs, I watched as the thing encircled my sister like a constrictor, its thin fingers grabbing her throat and squeezing to cut short that awful scream into a painful wheeze. It opened its mouth again and made that camera shutter clack a few more times before it did something that I can't even begin to fathom or properly do justice to with words. It drained the life from her. I could see it happening. Her eyes were wide with terror as her form seemed to blur, and what I could most accurately describe as her soul was ripped from her body and into that horrid creature's open mouth. Her hair turned white and her skin went pallid and gray until she almost looked like the thing that was killing her. I bolted down the stairs in an attempt to stop what I was seeing, but I was quickly flung away as it reached an arm out and threw me backwards with little to no effort. I slammed hard against the stairway and heard my leg snap. I watched, screaming myself in a mix of terror and pain as it drained every last drop of life from my sister and left her in a sunken, wide-eyed shell on the floor of our entryway. I knew I was next. It stared at me with those gleaming eyes rolling in their sockets and stretched that thin line of a mouth into a facsimile of a smile. And then it turned away and slithered through the half-open front door. I was left alone, legs shattered, mind broken, staring helplessly at my sister's lifeless corpse. It felt like I was laying there for hours, soaking in the scene around me, the pain in my leg fading to shock, and thoughts racing through my mind as to why it hadn't killed me too. The screams of my parents when they finally woke up and found us seemed like they were happening in another world, like distant cries of pain being carried on the wind. My parents never really recovered from the loss. The police created a narrative that made sense to them. A prowler breaks into an isolated home. The kids, myself and my sister, startled this prowler and he attacks us. My leg is broken and my poor sister, is apparently scared to death. Heart failure due to an acute stress response. What kind of 16-year-old girl has heart failure from being scared? My parents bought it, though, unfortunately. They never forgave themselves for sleeping through the encounter, despite the fact that the creature had obviously put them in some kind of comatose state while he attacked us. My mother and father separated a few years later, and shortly after that, Dad drank himself to death. Mom hasn't spoken to me in years. She fell down her own shame spiral that led her to isolating herself from us to protect herself from the pain. I, on the other hand, just forgot as much about the encounter as my mind would allow. I, too, decided the police's story was easier to digest than the truth. Maybe it helped. Maybe I'd be a raving lunatic otherwise. I can't say remembering all of this now has helped my mental health at all. And that brings us to now, and what brought back those memories in the first place. A much shorter story, but one that I'm hoping won't be my last to tell. 3 nights ago, I saw it again. I'd gotten home from work and I was trying to relax and watch some television before bed. I ended up falling asleep in my chair and woke up to an infomercial playing way too loud. I shut off the TV and checked my phone. It was 1:30 in the morning. Again. In that moment, a chill went down my spine, that first tinge of memory coming to me like a frigid wave. I felt compelled to go to my window, almost like some unseen hand was guiding me. I know how that sounds, but it is the truth. I looked out into the courtyard of my apartment building, expecting to see the parking lot and entranceway, and instead I saw my parents' backyard, a sight I hadn't seen in almost 30 years. There was the woodshed I had built, and standing next to it a tall, gaunt man dressed in flowing rags. His eyes shining and his head cocked at an unnatural angle. And I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Flashes of my sister's face, frozen in horror, burned behind my eyes, and before I knew it, the thing was at my window, peering in at me, unblinking. The window slowly opened as I backed away. The creature slid through the crack in that serpentine way it had of moving and stood before me, somehow even taller than I remember. Its thin, lined mouth dropped open and it released my sister's horrifying scream from somewhere deep down inside it before it did that quick, shuddering motion. Sleep like the dead. It reached for me and I screamed, and then it was daylight. The creature was gone, and 7 hours had somehow passed. I spent a long time wondering if I was dead and just hadn't realized it. Maybe that would have been preferable. Maybe it would be better for me to be trapped inside that monstrosity like my sister. At least then, I wouldn't be wondering when it was coming back. Horror movies never really scared me. Scary books had no effect. Haunted houses, meaningless. I was never a child who slept with the covers over their face or with a nightlight. And as a little girl, I never felt the need to crawl into bed with my mother after having a nightmare. I never really had nightmares to begin with, and the few that I did, most would never consider a nightmare at all. I've never been afraid of what goes bump in the night. Our home security system kept away fears of very real humans with dark intentions, as did our Rottweiler, aptly named Killer. As for threats outside the home, well, who could be afraid in a nice white upper-class community? I've lived in a bland bubble all my life, never really knowing what fear is. So why should I be afraid of the dark? Up until this moment, I haven't been. I saw it all as childish and illogical. Of course, I don't feel that way anymore. I'm writing this to you now as a warning because it's too late for me. I know that now, and it's brought on a surreal sort of calm. When I finish warning you, it'll be all over. So forgive me for being long-winded. I enjoyed life a bit more than I was once willing to admit. It all started with what I thought was a virus. I'd been linked to a video called Girls and Boys Come Out to Play. It sounded harmless enough. I thought it was an art student film, perhaps. The person who'd linked the video promised that it was very good, well worth watching. I can't remember the video. All I can remember is the feeling that it brought up. It wasn't quite fear, but it was close. I was uncomfortable. I was unnerved. I was also vaguely ill. From then on, things only got worse. The background on my computer had changed to a picture of a disturbed-looking young woman who stared at me from a black abyss. Every now and then, and growing more frequent by the day, strange noises would emit from my computer even though the sound wasn't on. Screaming, strange laughter, grinding noises. At the time, I was annoyed. The fear hadn't quite settled in yet. Then the faces started popping up, like those ridiculous screamers that scared my friends in high school. Yet these were different. They looked real. They were the faces of the dead, and they had died violent deaths. I wish I could say that I stopped using the computer, but I couldn't. My job requires me to use my computer frequently. What was I to do? I had no other computer available to me. I tried to take it in to have the virus removed, but no one could help me. They said there was no virus. The computer was fine. Meanwhile, it got worse. The faces weren't just popping up, they'd stay, and with those horrible, rotted eyes, they'd hold my gaze. I couldn't look away from them and their terrible, mocking grins. And oh God, the smell! My computer forever had a stench of death around it. I thought I was going crazy. I thought that perhaps someone was messing with me. The people at the computer repair place didn't know what they were talking about. Something was wrong, but I knew that it had to be something very real that just had to be fixed. So I got a new computer. Everything was fine for a while, but then it all came back, and in full force. Now there were voices. Now there was screaming. Now the rotted faces showed their stinking bodies. I could see every maggot, every fly, every pus-filled crevice, and they were calling to me. telling me that soon, very soon, I'd be joining them. They were so angry that I'd tried to get rid of them, and now they would make me pay. I didn't know what to do. Ignoring the problem wasn't working. I thought maybe it was the fault of a friend from work. Perhaps it came from the emails they'd been sending me. I never thought it was the video, not for a second. After all, that just wasn't logical. I was at the end of my rope. Today I unplugged the computer and began packing. I'd go on vacation, clear my head, and pray that everything would come back to normal. Then a few minutes ago, I realized that it wouldn't. The power went out, and for the first time in my life, I felt true fear. I had no idea that in a few moments, it would become mind-numbing. I stumbled through the house looking for a flashlight when I saw that something was still giving off light. The computer. The unplugged computer was on, and the woman in the background was moving, beckoning me to the screen. I couldn't help myself. I sat down across from her with the darkness caving in all around me. And then the woman, like all of the other images I've seen before, began to rot away. The whole scene rotted away, and then the screen went black. And without light, without a means of seeing my reflection, I saw her behind me for the briefest of moments, a bloody, rusted knife in hand. The computer came back to life, and my old background had returned. But I know it's not over, so I've decided to come here. I know you all like to be scared, right? Well, take it from someone who's only very recently known fear. It's not always worth it. And not everything is fun and games. Of course, you probably won't believe me. Why should you? The thing is, I haven't been completely honest with you. There was no video. It was a story. A story quite similar to this one, though with subtle plot differences and perhaps better storytelling. I know all of you like stories that might give you a good scare. That's probably why you started reading this one. Now that you've read this, you will share my fate. I know it's cruel and perhaps unfair, but it has to be done. I just hope you can take comfort in knowing that when I'm the woman haunting your computer, I'll be a bit more gentle if I can. And if I can, I'll use a blade that's a little less dull. Pictures of those who came before us are going to be a little less grotesque. Sounds a little less alarming. But then again, you do like to be scared, right? Don't worry. I won't ask you to repost this story 5 times. Nothing will save you. After all, nothing could save me. Power is still out, and I know behind me the woman is waiting for me. I'll see you very soon. Goodbye. For now. It's taken me well over a year to gather the courage to talk about this openly. I can't help but feel responsible, and you'll understand why soon. On a late night in October of 2015, the sky collapsed over my town. The clouds that had descended blanketed themselves over my small suburban neighborhood and the nearby highway. The fog was so dense that looking out of the window yielded nearly the same results as staring directly at a blank piece of paper. That night, I remember hearing the weather sirens sounding off, echoing out their unearthly chortle across the empty streets surrounding my home. I ignored them at first, choosing to instead continue my ritual of watching my nighttime sitcoms. That, however, ended soon after the first siren went off. The flickering imagery on my much too old television broke apart, exposing warnings of low visibility and severe lightning in my sitcom's place. I watched and listened as the television seemed to join the call of the sirens outside, letting loose their bleeps and emergency tones. The signal warned us to stay inside and to avoid driving for our safety and the safety of others. I let out a quick huff in distaste as my nightly routine was interrupted. I set my eyes on the radio and decided I should give it a quick try. Anything would be better than sitting in silence. Unfortunately, that thought was wrong. As I wandered towards my radio and flicked it to life, the only noises that escaped were robotic and emotionless warnings from the National Weather Service. I felt my shoulders shrug in defeat. If this had been a tornado or hailstorm, I'd have appreciated the heads up. I could prep for the storm, but there was nothing I could do about fog. From there, I let my eyes wander to the far too bright mist sweeping across what should be the naturally dark streets. I let out a sigh and broke my gaze before heading over to my kitchen, deciding that maybe some hot chocolate would relax me enough to doze off and let my dreams take me away from this strange but boring evening. But as I was stirring the hot chocolate mix into the steaming milk, an idea hit me. I had an old CB radio locked up in my attic. I might not be able to watch my shows or listen to my radio, but maybe, if I was lucky enough, some trucker would be stopped on the highway and would be willing to chat with me. I knew it was a bit of a long shot. CB radios were very rapidly going out of style, even for truckers. But I knew a few still had them for emergencies or for idle chatter. I left the kitchen with my hot chocolate in hand and crept up to my attic steps. I blew softly on the steam rising from my cup as I made the journey to my chest of goodies from yesteryear. I lurched the old chest open and began to set up my little communications area. I even pulled up an old dusty table that I had stored away for parties and placed all of my needed equipment on it. After a few minutes, was ready to go. Took a small sip of my drink and turned the radio on. I listened as the age cracked through the speakers. I had hoped that the radio had survived the prolonged stay in storage, and luckily, besides from the faint crackles, it seemed rather functional. I keyed the mic and called out through the fog, hopefully to anyone as idle and bored as myself. Calling out to anyone stuck in the fog, is anyone out there? I listened to the static of the radio fading in and out, nearly silently. Then the sputter of white noise came across the net before an old man's voice came in relatively clearly. Thank goodness someone's out there. I'm losing my mind out here. Can I get a radio check? His elderly voice was gruff and hoarse, the type of voice you'd expect from someone who spent a lifetime on the road. I let my lips curl up into a smile. I really hadn't expected a reply. You coming in clear? How me? I asked, making sure that he could hear my end of the conversation. A little broken up, but audible. This shit weather came out of nowhere, he grumbled. I imagined him leaning back in his seat, arms crossed with a radio dug into one hand. I could practically envision his windows completely smothered by the fog, isolated from everything. Yeah, I didn't see anything on the television until after the fog hit. All the stations are playing the emergency messages. I waited for a few seconds for his response. So you're holed up in your home then? I thought you might be on the road like me. I heard a slightly disappointed groan from his end. Did you at least get to see the clouds fall? I paused for a moment. I'd been watching my shows, oblivious to the weather outside until the warnings. I didn't have the privilege to see it roll into the neighborhood. That's a firm. I'm at my place right now, and no, I didn't get to see it hit. A brief chuckle and a wheeze came from over the radio. You missed out. Craziest thing I've ever seen. It was almost like the clouds hit a cliff mid-air and then fell straight down. They came hard enough that I was actually worried they'd beat my truck up. His voice trailed off slightly in thought. I managed to park on the side of the road. Didn't see anyone else near me. Well, damn. I'm sorry I missed it then, I replied, my smile escaping through my voice. Yeah, well, maybe some kids got it on tape. Static interrupted him, squealing loudly out of the speakers. I jumped back slightly, reaching for my ears, but his voice fought through it. The fuck was that? Everything all right? I radioed in. Yeah, I think so. I think I just saw a car zip by, some sort of weird black light on it. He gave a dismissive tisk. I know damn well they can't see anything in this fog. Hell, I couldn't see anything but their dumb light going off. I leaned in closer to the radio, trying to think of an explanation, but coming up empty-handed. Some people just have a death wish, I guess, I shrugged. Damn stupid if you ask me. I'd say they only care about themselves, but if that was true, they'd be parked on the side of the road, like me. He gave another wheezy laugh, ending in a coughing fit. Getting a little curious, I started asking him some questions. Any chance you can make anything else out there? They said there's some bad lightning in the area, but I haven't seen or heard anything like that yet. Nah, not a damn thing. Haven't heard any thunder either. Besides you, it's as quiet as the grave out here. This fog doesn't even look like it's moving, and I sure as hell don't hear any wind hitting the truck. I bit my lip, trying to concentrate on any noises outside. Being in my attic, I should be able to hear the wind sweeping its way through the wooden boards of my house, but he was right. There was none. This is the weirdest damn storm I've ever seen. To be honest, Wait. No. Oh, the lights are back. He interrupted himself. I could hear his voice strain as his focus shifted outside of the truck. They don't look right. They aren't on the road. His voice was slowly trailing off. What do you mean? Where are you? I asked, hoping everything was all right. That's not right. Shit. Only thing on that side of the road is the tree line. No way in hell a car could squeeze through there. The lights look too high off the ground, too. They're a little higher than my eye level, and I'm in a goddamn semi. Hey, just keep your eyes on it and let me know if you're all right. I need to know you're okay. I could hear him swallow hard. They're gone. Zipped away again. Actually, fuck me, they didn't just zip away, they looked like they ran away. I swear they goddamn crouched and sprinted off. Static consumed the transmission again, but nowhere near as badly as before. It's just some lights. Maybe someone's got flares out there? Could be some hunters trying to find their way back home in this fog? I tried sounding reasonable. I figured there must be some sort of rational explanation. Yeah, that's gotta be it. The fog must be screwing with my depth perception. I can't see anything out there, so I think I'm good. I heard faint noises coming from the radio just behind his voice. It didn't seem like something trying to make contact with him through the radio. Rather, it sounded like something that happened to get captured while the old trucker was talking. Is there someone there with you? I asked, trying to sound unconcerned, as if it was a normal question to ask. Negative. Just me. He sounded a bit put off, like he knew something was wrong. I could tell he was on edge. I just wanted to know if you were alone or not, just to see if you had an extra set of eyes and ears out there with you. Oh no, it's just me out here. There was a brief pause followed by another explosion of static. He eventually radioed back. Alright, I'm done. Something just slammed into my trailer. I heard a loud metallic crash explode from my speakers, followed by yelling. That ain't no hunter. It's rocking my goddamn truck. His voice sounded frightened. Static kept pulsating through the radio. You need me to call the police? I asked, worried about the safety of my new friend. No, I'm already dialed in. I just got put on hold. Gonna hold off a bit on making noise and hope it goes away. If this is some sort of bear, it's gotta be a record holder. I left the radio alone for a little while, waiting for the old man to reply. I was scared for him. After a few surges of static and several minutes, I finally got a reply. The older trucker seemed hushed, and he talked under his breath. Hey, I hope you're still there. I don't want to be a burden to you, but I'm not feeling all that safe out here. Do you think you could pull up a map or something and get me out of here? I think I'll have to leave my trailer behind, but this job ain't worth my life. The faint sound of static hauntingly trailed off his words. I felt bad for the man. Something out there was really setting him off. Hey, yeah, sure. If you can make it to my front door, I'll let you in. I'm just around the corner from the highway. You're a real lifesaver. Just give me a second. I'll get out my mobile and you can lead me there. I bit my cheek anxiously. I had no idea if what I was doing was right or even safe for that matter. But he needed help and I wasn't about to turn him away. All right. I'm opening up my truck. He called in, his voice distorted heavily by static. The fog must have made the transmissions come in broken. I reasoned to myself. Let me know when you hit a sign. I'll tell you where to go from there. A few seconds passed before he responded again. Okay, Willard Street. His voice crackled in. Take a right down that road and keep going until you hit an intersection. A few more seconds passed. Johnson and Avery, the voice remarked. I felt confused. He would have had to have been sprinting to have made it that quickly to the next sign. Are you all right? You need me to call someone? The radio echoed back my voice to me, muffled and contorted before I got a response from the man. No, I just want to get out of this fog. The trucker's voice repeated a few times before breaking apart into static. All right, then, take Avery all the way down, I replied. I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck. Something about this wasn't right, and I wasn't dumb. My neighbor directly across my street was a police captain, so I figured if I sent the old man there, he could get the help that he needed, and I could pass it off as a mistake with my mental directions if he asked. Tucker Court, the man reverberated with static. Let's see, walk 3 houses down, and my place should be on the left. I closed my eyes tightly, my forehead scrunched up in worry. I prayed this would work out for the best. I'm outside, the old trucker chortled while different pitches of his voice all resonated nearly at the same time, repeating themselves. I put the mic to my mouth to tell him to knock, but I couldn't muster up the courage. I set the radio down and turned it off. I looked over my shoulder to my attic's window. I took a deep breath and released it before deciding to take a gander. I wasn't expecting to see much. I mean, how could I? The fog covered everything. But I looked anyway. I got out of my chair and crept towards the window. I placed my hand on the wooden frame surrounding the glass and took in a deep breath, conjuring my courage. Slowly grabbed the curtains and very gently pushed them to the side, allowing just enough space for my eye to peek through. Now, I know if you're listening to this, you want answers as to who or what was out there, but the fog was too thick. Nothing but whiteness exposed itself to me visually, but physically, emotionally, I felt it out there. I can only describe it as dread incarnate. It was visceral. A primal feeling that washed over me stronger than anything else that I've ever felt. I knew someone or something was out there and that it wasn't natural. It had a goal, an indecipherable, incomprehensible goal, and that goal led nowhere good. I could feel the sense of death creep into my bones, locking my joints in place. My body was stiffening for a quick end. As that feeling burned its way into my memories, I forced myself to have the courage to run away from that window. I turned my back towards the fog behind me and ran for my stairs. I ran on instinct. I felt my feet land on my lower floor and let myself be guided towards the only place in my home where I couldn't see into the mist, my windowless closet. I jumped inside and slammed the door behind me. I remember sitting in that closet for hours, staring off into the darkness, praying and hoping that I had imagined the feeling. I stayed up all night until I could see the sun filter in from outside my closet door. Then I exited my safe haven and crawled to a window before I peered outside. I felt my mouth gape open when I saw my neighbor's attic window was broken into. No marks on the walls of the home gave any sort of hint as to how whatever it was had climbed inside. I instinctively called the police, and they responded with haste. After all, my neighbor was one of their own. They took me in and refused to tell me what they had found inside. Even afterwards, the newspapers had nearly no information regarding the crime. The most I could gather was that my neighbor's family was murdered in their home while they slept. Him, his wife, and his 2 children were all gone. Those lives were extinguished because of me. Though that wasn't all that happened that night, there was another murder that also happened on the highway. An old trucker named Gale. Unlike the captain and his family, Gale's death was listed as an animal attack and was separate from the murder investigation. They claimed that he parked too close to the woods and a bear must have wandered up to his door. They said they don't know what possessed him to open his door, but that had to have been when the bear got inside. He was mauled to death, and that so-called bear ripped his head from his shoulders and took it off into the woods. They never found it. But I know differently. We know differently. That wasn't a freak accident. Something's out there. And it's just waiting for directions. I grew up in Oregon, right on the cold, dismal edge of the Pacific Ocean. 15 minutes in any direction would take you to a beach, an open expanse of sand dunes, a national state park, or one of about a dozen permanent lakes. For years, every summer we'd go to a family friend's house to use their lakefront property and their dock. Looking back, it doesn't seem like much, but I can remember spending countless hours there swimming, kayaking, paddleboarding, or snorkeling. When I was 12 years old, I refused to go back again. I hated the lake. I hated that house. I had nightmares for years and never explained to anyone why it happened. I still don't like to talk about it. Whenever I do, I feel like I can smell that lake again. People don't realize, but lakes are dirty places. Animals piss and shit and die in them. All kinds of plants rot on the surface. People dump their garbage. There's so much water that stays clear that people think it's clean, but it's not. All the lakes that I've been to have a certain smell, like they're not totally pure. This lake, my lake, it slowly developed a smell like death. That sounds dramatic, I know. It's not like you could just sniff the air and think that's death. No one would have gone to the lake if it had been like that. It was just a subtle thing that you caught a whiff of once and then it was gone. Maybe you looked around you for a dead fish or a squirrel or something and then you forgot about it. I probably only noticed it was getting worse because on most days I was there from sunup to sundown. The dock that our friends owned was a simple hand-built thing that involved styrofoam and treated 2x4s. A few times it had come loose from the rope that held it and drifted across the lake. It was sandwiched between two bigger and more impressive boathouses. As you faced the lake from the shore, the boathouse on the right was freshly painted bright red and housed a small white fishing boat. A simple pulley system allowed the boat to be lifted out of the water while it was stored in the majority of the year when it wasn't being used. We never saw the inside of the boathouse on the left, and we also never saw anyone use it. It was made of plywood that had once been painted dark green, though years of weather had warped the edges of the wood and it had shed about half of its paint. That summer, when I was 12, it disappeared, and we all assumed that it had just been torn down so that it wouldn't be such an eyesore anymore. That summer was the first one that I got really into snorkeling. I had explored the surface of the lake many times before in a boat, but that summer I got to see a whole other world hidden below the surface. My friends and I caught salamanders, we built things out of cinder blocks on the sandy bottom. We found everything from fishing lures and golf balls to pieces of old boats and docks from the past. As you might have guessed, the lake was pretty small, but it was frighteningly deep. Huge trees would fall into it on occasion. They'd become waterlogged and would turn vertically with only their roots or the broken bases poking above the surface. A swimmer drowned there once, and even though they used scuba equipment to try and find the body, it was never recovered. At a depth of about 10 feet, the water was already cold as it was in the winter. At about 15 feet, it was dark enough that a thick forest of weeds were able to grow on the bottom. Beyond that, it was just cold and darkness. My friend and I devised a plan to use an upside-down plastic barrel full of air and a boat anchor to allow us to dive much further than we could while only holding our breaths from the surface. We'd go out to the dive spot using a surfboard, then with the barrel covering our heads and our masks, we clutched the anchor and jumped off, quickly sinking to the bottom of the lake. You basically dove blind since you had the bucket over your head. We could go far enough that the pressure would compress the air in the barrel to half its original size. All we had to do in order to surface was release the anchor, and the barrel full of air would propel us quickly to the surface. Then we'd reel up the anchor with a rope, change spots, and start again. This was fun for us, to see how far we could go, and we got pretty good at it. The only bad times were when we would land in the deep weeds, which instantly tangled around our legs and ankles. We never got seriously stuck, but it would freak you out when you were expecting to land with both feet in the sand, and instead you got grabbed by weeds. On a successful dive, you could see about 5 to 10 feet in any direction, and looking up, you could see the outline of the sun and the long shadow of the surfboard. The last time I ever dove into that lake, the last time I ever swam in open water in general, was when I found the remains of the neighbor's boathouse. It was the first dive of the day. We had paddled the surfboard straight out from the dock, a bit further than we normally did. It was about 10:30 a.m., and the water was still slightly cold from the night before. I had put on my mask and snorkel, put the bucket over my head, and curled my legs around the anchor as normal. This day, my friend had also brought his father's underwater flashlight, so I readied that as well as the bucket above my head and took the plunge. I remember falling for a long time, too long because the pressure was pressing my mask back against my face uncomfortably, and the air in the barrel was compressed to smaller than I'd ever seen it. The rope holding the anchor pulled taut, and I almost lost my grip. I don't believe in the little voice inside of a person that tells them the difference between right and wrong. I did, however, experience a very loud message from inside myself telling me that this was not a place that I should be. It was too cold, too dark, and the pressure crushed in from all sides. It wasn't the first time that I'd realized the absurdity of our little diving system, but it was the first time that it had struck me as being truly stupid. My body gave me the message loud and clear that I was being an idiot, but my curiosity ultimately won out. Just a quick little peek. Yeah, idiot. I lifted the barrel above my head and got the first sight of how deep I'd actually come. I was suspended on the rope between a gradient of gray-green above me to only blackness below. If I could have looked at myself from the outside, I'm pretty sure that I would have resembled a worm on a hook. I had to let go of the barrel with one hand in order to grab the flashlight tucked into my swim trunks. The air in the bucket strained to float up, and the container tipped at a dangerous angle, but the bubble of air, being so compressed, stayed intact at the top of the barrel. I clicked on the flashlight, shining it down right in front of me. The thin beam of harsh white light sprung into existence like a camera flash, and I saw people. Pale faces through thick, motionless black hair staring up at me from inside the remains of that old green boathouse flipped upside down or fallen apart. There they were right below me. I screamed and dropped the flashlight at the same time as I kicked off from the anchor. The barrel started pulling me up to the surface faster and faster. In a complete panic, I thrashed my remaining arm and legs in order to try and go faster still. I had expelled all the air in my lungs, and I felt like this was the moment that I was going to die. I felt sure that they were right behind me, their pale hands inches from my ankles. One moment to the next felt like an eternity. The end of the rope fell past me. 10 more feet. 9. 8. Fire in my empty lungs. I don't remember breaking the surface. I do, however, remember being on top of the surfboard, alternately breathing so hard that I couldn't cry and crying so hard that I couldn't take a breath as my friend pushed me to shore. Once I reached dry land, I left without even looking back. I felt crazy then, that I couldn't tell him, or my parents, or anyone. There were people down there, dead ones, with empty eyes staring up at the gray, faraway surface. They must have been weighted down or restrained somehow. I don't remember seeing it, though. What I do remember is that the flashlight fell into the weeds, and it shone on the most horrible part of all of this. The legs of one of these things had been roughly sewn together to create the image of a grotesque mermaid, including a large and elegantly shaped black tail. For a long time after that incident, I tried to pretend that it hadn't happened, that I hadn't seen what I thought I did. Trees or logs, not twin female bodies. A patch of sand through the weeds. Anything not to have to accept a reality that scene could exist in. As an adult, I've had to accept it. I still see it in the dark, and I can't escape it. I've realized that whoever owned that boathouse must have been experimenting. The swimmer who disappeared was probably one of those two victims. I don't know who the other woman might have been. Somehow the bodies would have to have been preserved. The only evidence of decay was from their eyes, which still stare at me in my nightmares. I'm still torn between wishing that I'd investigated and learned more about it, and wishing to hell that I had never, ever seen it. When thinking back to my earliest memories, nothing is concrete. A string of hazy images come to mind like random snapshots out of time, each one associated with certain feelings and emotions. They're imbued with a mystical, dreamlike quality, a gift born of childhood naivety. The magic of every Christmas, when Santa was still real, for example, is an experience of pure joy that is lost with maturity. Many of these snapshots are impossible to place in any sort of context. They're just there, sunken in the crevices of the brain without rhyme or reason. Playing with my dad's beard in a wood-paneled room, him smiling down at me. Comforting. Or discovering a long row of marching ants in someone's wooded backyard all by myself. It's exciting. Some of them don't even seem real in hindsight. Did I actually fall from that tree by the lake only to land on my feet without a scratch? Was it really a dream? I don't think so. Sure, I have memories of distant dreams, but there is a clear distinction between the dreams and reality of my past. I don't know how I can tell, I just can. And for this reason, one memory has always troubled me. The experience was so surreal, and yet certain details stand out with marked clarity. I'm not exactly sure when it happened. I couldn't have been older than 5 or 6 years old. My brother and I were sleeping in our bunk bed. Because he was older, he was on the top bunk. I had just woken up, but it was still nighttime. Something felt different. I remember seeing and smelling the rain, but not hearing any. The window was open, and it was clearly very cold in the room. Why was the window open? The curtains were gently flapping, but there was no breeze. The quiet was so intense it buzzed through my ears. I'd been lying on my side with one arm dangling off the edge of the bed. Gradually, I became aware that it was warmer near the floor. I felt some kind of heated breeze gently strike my hand, coming and going in short bursts. And finally, I recognized it as someone's breathing. Then the woman slid out from under my bed. The nightlight showed that she had long, blondish hair and wore a white nightgown, and in the dimness I thought it was my mother. I wasn't at all scared at the time. It's funny how a child's mind works. What's Mommy doing under the bed? Must be getting something or checking for monsters. I was too tired to say anything and remained motionless, watching. The woman was on her back, but her face stayed in the shadows. She rolled over and crawled on all fours to the far end of the bed and then glided up the ladder to the top bunk. Her every movement was silky smooth and completely silent. She reminded me of a white ribbon dancing in the wind. I closed my eyes and fell back to sleep. I also remember my brother telling me about a weird dream the next morning. He dreamt of a woman who lived under the floor and came out at night to play in the rain. When her clothes got soaked, she went back inside and would whisper things to anyone who was sleeping. It became a recurring dream for him until our family moved out of that house. Strange what the brain chooses to remember.